Thanks for joining us. Harmony, when you're ready, you call roll.
Director Bradley, Director Brems, Director Cardenas,
Here.
Director Daly,
Here.
Director Keegley, Director Litback, Director Olson,
Present.
Director Peterson,
Here.
Director Prokopas,
Here.
Director Silvestrini, Director Stevenson.
Here. Thank you. All right, moving to public comment. Do we have any public comments today? We know who you are. Please state your name.
My name is Lisa Dudley, and I am here today because Mayor Silvestrini is absent. So he asked if I would please just extend to the board and to the sheriff and to the team a very heartfelt thank you to the mental health unit. So thank you.
All right, do we have any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, now we'll move on to the UPD update. Here.
Well, and I want to thank Lisa Dudley and Mayor Silvestrini for that, because we've been talking a lot about our Metro Mental Health Unit and how effective they've been lately. They actually helped the jail recently with an individual as well, and I'm just very grateful that this board has been supportive of that Metro Mental Health and also the county council. A couple things I just wanted to talk about. First of all, I want to let you know that our Metro Gang Unit is also a unit that I hope that you all know they work extremely hard. And one of the things we're so proud about is when we do have shooting or an aggravated assault or a major case, those guys are coming out and working hours and hours, and they always get their guy. So we're super proud of them. We had a shooting recently, and they were able to make some arrests on that. One of the things, though, that I hope that you may be aware of is gangs are changing a lot, and they're getting younger and younger. So not only does the Metro Gang Unit go out and after these offenders, but they're also trying to figure out how you mentor these young kids to not go into the gangs, to the gang-free program. So just kudos to those groups of individuals that work so hard. It's very noticeable. So just wanted to bring that to the board's attention. We have been also working on meeting with the commanders on this reorganization. And it's been a challenge because we don't know what people are doing. And so I know I've heard from the board before, we don't know what the sheriff's doing, but when we don't know what Slovisa is, what's going to occur with Slovisa, that's a challenge too. So we're just trying to do preliminary things. And I know Chief Mazarin is keeping the board up to date on what he is doing. Just so you know, the undersheriff is doing something similar for the sheriff's office, but we're trying to work all together to make sure that everybody, so we're not missing anything. So the impact won't be so significant, even though we know it will be a significant impact to the UPD and the members of the UPD for budget-wise. So we're trying to figure out ways to keep costs low and work together with that. Some of the things that are coming up is Mayor Wilson has scheduled a meeting with Slovisa members June 2nd. And hopefully with that meeting, we'll be able to get some information as to what Slovisa will be doing. I've also talked with some Slovisa mayors, and it looks like they're going after legislation for further funding. So that's something to take, think about, is if that they're moving forward on that. So it does look like things are finally moving, and that really will help us out a lot. So I don't have any other updates other than if there's questions that you have for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions from the sheriff? Okay, seeing none. Move on to item 4, buyout update lieutenant position funding proposal.
Yes, so we're gonna put up a slide, I think, Rick, you've got that. So just to let you know, nobody took the buyout. So I can tell you, couple things, nobody wants to leave. That's a great thing, right? When people want to stay in an organization. But also, for the amount of money that we were offering, it just wasn't enough. We, in the previous buyout, we offered 40,000, so we offered 25. Rick, can you scroll down just a little bit right there? And that's what the board had approved. But even with, if we were to increase that, with talking to individuals who are eligible to retire, there's not an appetite for it. So we would like to make a proposal. This slide actually talks about how the board approved the new budget items for the new chief of reorganization, the salary that goes with that, and the cost savings to eliminate the watch commander, utilizing the IACP study money, and then at the end, what our proposal would be is to take that 25,000 and use it to help compensate the lieutenant that will be moved back to a sergeant position. We have a sergeant position available. We can move that individual there, and just if the board would approve for us to continue to pay that extra, he wouldn't lose financially, but he would be assigned to a sergeant position. The new cost would be $1,767 because you've already approved the 25. What we would do is take the wage of that sergeant that's the empty allocation, use that, and the difference between a lieutenant and sergeant pay is the 26,600 or 26,767. That makes sense to anyone. Okay. You're nodding your head, good.
That sounds like that makes the most sense. If nobody was willing to take the buyout, then.
Right. Right. So and all of this is going to be temporary, just like the reassignment of the chief is temporary. Everything is temporary. So, you know, it's hard when people are impacted that way, but this would keep him financially whole. We would just need the board to approve another 1,767 because you've already approved the $25,000 buyout. And also the $25,000 buyout is not reflected in the budget we're going to present today because we need you to make a decision on this. So
What's the difference in pay? Remind me that.
the 25 and the 1767 is to compensate from a sergeant to a lieutenant. That makes sense. So it's
The salaries, is that the difference in
Yeah.
salaries? Okay, thanks.
We're having one lieutenant at the expense of about $26,000 a year. And is this considered a reduction in force by title, but not pay?
Well, we can reassign him to a sergeant's position, but I'm not sure if it's considered a reduction in force because he's still in a duty, correct?
There's no trickle down below him. It stops at. the
Yeah, because there's
sergeant.
an empty allocation right now that has not been filled, and that's in Magna. So we would just move him to that position in Magna, but with the 26,000, it's compensating back and it'd keep him whole financially. And then he would just do the job of what the sergeant would be doing out in Magna.
Reduction, of course, is an elimination of a position and usually an individual, so it's not, I see it as a reassignment.
Sorry, so because there's conversations in Midville right now with the sergeant, but did you just say this would be in Magna?
Yes, Magna has an open DEU sergeant that they have not filled. And Chief Mazarin talked with Chief Craig, and they worked out that Chief Craig could take that and basically it's Lieutenant Nate Ward. He would take Nate Ward and assign him to that position temporarily until all of this gets resolved, or we move on, or whatever we decide to do.
So essentially, we're just approving 1767.
Yeah, because you've already actually approved the 25,000, but just note that we have not put any of that into the budget we'll present today because it wasn't approved. So once it's approved, we can do that budget adjustment. And yes.
Yeah, is this just a temporary 1 year fix, or if this goes beyond 1 year, will he bump back the sergeant pay? Or are we just talking a lieutenant with sergeant name?
We don't know on the temporary, and again, we anticipated people would retire before, but there are individuals that have said they will be retiring in the next year. So that it's just, if somebody from lieutenant and above will retire, then that fixes the issue. So
So do we have a commitment with that particular lieutenant that when that a lieutenant slot opens, in this case, he will be the first in line to
absolutely,
take the slot.
yeah, absolutely.
Now, that, has the employee group weighed in on this? I mean, I assume nobody wants, we don't want to rip it. And
Right.
so this is the best possible.
Yeah.
Short-term fix to make that happen without affecting somebody's pay. So I think it's probably the best option we have.
Sure. I could just throw out to the board, I had a discussion with the lieutenant last night. He's present in the room. We had a good discussion. He understands some of the needs of what's going on. This is, again, like the sheriff said, it's temporary. We're trying to hold everyone as harmless as we can. And at the max, there's, and again, anything can change. So I just want to preface my comment with that. But I could see there's a strong probability that this will only last for maybe a few months, based on some other conversations I had yesterday.
Do we know, have we had any conversations about how other sergeants I feel? If they've got somebody who's technically making.
Well, right now, all the sergeant positions are taken. We'd have to go out to the people waiting to be promoted, how they feel. But they get promoted when there's an opening. So have you done that?
I have, I've talked to the next person on the list, kind of explain the situation. I'll have a follow-up conversation with him after this meeting, because obviously the board's gonna make decisions that will affect that. So myself, the sheriff, or the undersheriff. Kind of where we're going, but again, I only anticipate at the max. It's always subject to change. This lasting for maybe a few months into the early fall, at the most, if not sooner.
I do think this concept is likely the right idea. I can't say that it's not a concern. Don't solve this within a few months, and then what does that create ongoing for our other sergeants in the organization?
Well, it wouldn't be other sergeants because it'd be an officer that's waiting to be promoted. So that person has not been promoted yet. And,
Maybe I don't understand this correctly. We would be paying one sergeant, and I know Nate's sitting in this room, so sorry, Nate, who's targeted. That Nate is making a fair amount more
Oh, I
than
didn't
other
get that,
sergeants,
yeah.
right? That's what
Right.
I'm worried about. Are we creating the route there where our other sergeants gonna be coming and saying, okay, well, you didn't pay me that much? And if we don't, I think if we solve this quickly, then it should be, I think it's okay. If we don't, then I think
Right.
that probably creates some other tension.
we've asked
Yeah,
concern to.
I think in the temperature, I guess the other sergeants kind of understand the situation we're in. Nobody wants to see anybody demoted or lose pay or anything like that. The messages I get is, support and let's get this fixed, and the message we keep pushing out there is, look, this is temporary. We're in a unique time. Get through this. It's temporary. Just knock it out. We've done it before.
Why do you get the indication that this won't last a few months?
Because I believe we'll have a retirement in a few months.
A lieutenant retirement?
a chief. You know, everything is subject to change. I'm only basing this on some very direct, heartfelt conversations, but I believe it will, this is Jason talking, I believe this will only last a few months at the most.
Why would that chief not be incentivized to take the first deal?
Well, again, sheriff, if you want to speak to this, with the feedback that I got, just like the sheriff said, the 25,000 was like, I can't even buy a used car for that.
Yeah, because when you retire, you know, you use the vehicle. But also, many times before somebody's going to retire, they may have some surgeries they want to complete or get done before they move to that next phase in their life, and that could be a possibility too. We've seen that multiple times when people are gearing up to retire. They go get everything fixed and then they're ready to retire. But we've been given some preliminary dates, and it could change. Could change tomorrow. Somebody may get a chief's job somewhere. I know everywhere I go, people are always asking, are UPD chiefs going to put in for these positions, because that's who they seek out. So you just never know when somebody's going to leave the organization.
So to reorganize things in my own head, we're going to spend $26,700 to put a Band-Aid on a problem for a few months.
Yes. It's either that or we do the reduction in force. You don't spend the money and the lieutenant goes back to a sergeant.
This is one option. What other options are there? I'm thinking in an $80 million organization to be heavy one lieutenant for as many as a few months. Hopefully.
Just continue to fund.
I just worry this is on the heels of us as a board telling we will keep the organization whole.
Right.
Made a commitment to all of our employees that there would be nobody lose their job and all that. I get it. We're redlining the pay, but they are losing the title. So somebody is losing something already 2 months after we told them. I wonder what message that sends. But of an $80 million organization, I would think we would be able to sustain the $26,000 increase to keep him whole. If it is only for a few short months, is there work that they can do at the lieutenant rank in the meantime? And there is somebody sitting number one on a sergeant's list somewhere that's very interested in what we do with this position, right? So I'm just wondering what.
Well, there's
other
plenty
options.
of work to do, even if he was in a sergeant's position, but you have to fund it.
That's the discussion we had yesterday. So that was. And there would be other things, because this particular person is the labor arena. And there's a lot going on, we need labor's help with.
And that's like in UPD 2.0, could there not be? We don't know what that's going to look like. We might need another lieutenant, it might resolve it that way. Or is there going to be additional work with you in the restructuring that this person could be utilized in their rank, in their capacity? I don't know. I'm just thinking of other options.
And that's what we've been doing with the overflow lieutenant currently. Has been.
How long have we been heavy lieutenant?
How long have you been? A year.
So we've already carried it a year. Actually.
Right, but we carried him out of Chief Mazarin's budget without asking the board to fund it. Yeah, because sometimes when you're deployed, they just change it and bring you back, and there's not much you can do about it. So we were trying to delay having to do a reduction in force.
So with this, you're just looking for motion to adopt this plan or to approve the extra 1767?
Yeah, because you've already approved the 25,000, and then once you adopt it or approve it, then we'll put that 26,767 into the budget, but it won't be reflected in this tentative budget that you're tentatively going to approve. Is that correct?
It is adopted, Sheriff. The word is adopted. I've read the statute.
So it is adopted.
I do think, I support doing this. I know that again, this puts Lieutenant Lord in an awkward position. I think it also potentially puts our other sergeants in an awkward position. So I think I support doing this, but I think if in a few months we don't have it handled, then it might be, we should have another important conversation about it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we'll keep the board updated.
Debbie.
If I can just speak quickly.
Chair, I have a question too.
The sheriff did ask me to do other options. We just figured that this was the best solution at the moment, because it was only going to be a temporary situation. But to your question, if we wanted to keep things whole and fund the lieutenant, keep him at the lieutenant position, the cost would be an additional $209,000.
For a sergeant spot.
No,
No.
the sergeant's spot would remain, just not to keep the lieutenant as the lieutenant, doing the lieutenant,
I got you.
duties of the lieutenant, and then fill the sergeant that isn't filled, fill that position with sergeant.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you?
I know Mayor Deli mentioned it, but could we hear from labor on this?
Well, labor is Nate. Oh, are you here, Nick?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I
You're
didn't
fine.
see you
You're
back
fine.
there.
Nate is labor and I
Yeah.
am here as well, so it's kind of just puts some chair position.
You wanna come up?
Huh?
Come on up. Thank you.
All right. The only thing I'd like to speak to on this is I don't know that, like, I trust that our administration has ran through all these options. We haven't had an opportunity to run through all the options. You know, as I'm sitting back here and hearing the possibility of these changes, racking my brain how to think of keeping, you know, our lieutenant outside of labor, right? Outside of his position, but our lieutenant in a lieutenant's position. Are there other creative solutions that we could do to you know, shift allocations to make sure that we could just keep this spot and maybe not fill a sergeant's position? But I haven't had like a deep dive. To kind of look at what that would take. I understand that, you know, this allocation that's available now is in Magna, not from a shared service. So shifting these pots would be kind of difficult, but I struggle to think that there's not another solution to try to keep them whole. It is the beginning of this process of this separation, and it does affect the morale to think we're already here and we're looking at how we're trying to keep this boat afloat with the positions that we have now. It kind of puts a little gray cloud on the thought of, you know, moving forward if at the beginning we're already having these struggles. But we're appreciative of the opportunity to talk about different solutions, because it's not something where we could just say, hey, we're just going to chop this guy and keep it moving. We are very appreciative that the administration and that you guys are looking at creative solutions on try to keep us whole. But as of an answer right now, a bit more time, I haven't had enough time to look and say, hey, where else can we look? What would be the best benefit for the employees, best benefit for the organization to make sure that we can kind of keep the ship afloat. So.
Sheriff, is it possible to reclassify the sergeant's position to a lieutenant position? Keep the lieutenant position in the lieutenant position and assign him to Magna?
Well, Magna already has the lieutenant, so Magna would have. to have
Understood.
another.
So maybe you'd have two there for a short period of time.
Yeah,
I'm just speaking to Nick's concern
Yeah,
about him being put into a sergeant's position at a lieutenant salary.
Yeah, I think, you know, the other
You
thing
can
that now
recall
I'm just thinking about this, but the other possible issue to consider is that we're gonna move somebody into the sergeant's position at Magna that's really gonna be temporary. And is that a good situation for Magna to have, you know, somebody in that position that's not long-term committed to it? And I mean, I can see the thinking here, and to think that we're gonna go through all this process without having these things crop up all the time is probably not realistic. So we're trying to make sure nobody gets hurt pay-wise, which is the number one, I think, priority in the short term. Just kind of thinking out loud about that issue. And
yeah, and we thought about that with Magna, but Chief Craig spoke with Chief Mazarin. They had that conversation, and I was assured Magna was good with
Yeah.
it, so.
yeah, I think it's probably the best short-term fix to this, especially I get where the chief's coming from, that it's probably a 2 or 3 month deal. And So the person on the sergeant's ranks at the top of the list, we just have to communicate with them that this is just going to be a short-term impact, and then with the lieutenant that's being affected short-term, even though they're not affected pay-wise, and it's just going to stall everything for a couple months, but as long as nobody's hurt pay-wise, I think probably the best short-term patch.
Or the board can always fund that extra lieutenant
I'm trying-
temporarily. It won't be the full 200. That's a full.
That's what I'm trying to
year.
wrap my head around. We've
But
been
if
heavy
the-
for a
We
year.
don't know how much it would be.
If we've been heavy for a year, the cost of this has only been the difference in salary of one person between a sergeant and a lieutenant, which is the 26,000 roughly, right? I get you said it's an additional $200,000, but that sergeant's allocation is already in the budget. It's not.
Well, that's in Magnus budget though. That's specific sergeants in Magnus budget
Precinct budget.
or precinct. budget.
But also, look, this, the
Or Slavic.
26,000 or the 27,000 is the difference of an annual salary, is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay, but we're gonna fund this for the difference of an annual salary for a period, an undetermined period of maybe 3 to 6 months. So if we pay a lieutenant pay for the next 3 to 6 months, which we've been doing for the last year and a half, essentially, we're saving a bunch of money. Right off the bat by continuing to pay the lieutenant's pay. Retract that the initial $25,000 because now it's gonna be it's assumed that it's gonna be a percentage of that, correct? Is that a good
However
assumption?
many months this goes on,
And now
you
if it
could
goes-
fund it. Or, you could say I'll fund it for 6 months or 3 months or whatever.
And if
months.
it ends up going over a year, then we burned ourselves, but if it ends up being less than that, where this assumed chief does retire, then, under that 1 year period, then we as a board have now saved money by retracting that $25,000. Have I got this correct in my head?
Well, I don't see any money savings to it because it's an overage that's not current in the budget. So it would be an additional cost to whatever you decide. So this would start in July, because you told me you had it funded till July. So from July to whenever whoever retires, you would have to carry that lieutenant. And it's a full lieutenant position.
So we'd have to
So
fund
because
for a
we
year.
would fill the sergeant spot with the new sergeant.
That is an option, then you would. Put people. in the service.
It just is the board willing to fund that and, that's all of you have to agree because and we could definitely use the person as a lieutenant. We could even keep keep Nate in watch command.
I guess I'd be interested in knowing the cost. Personally, I get hesitant just because we don't know what startup costs we're gonna have with UPD 2.0. Already having to figure out this fund balance issue, the fund balance that we've had in our precinct is being used towards that. Midvale, our budget shrank by 1% this year. We're in a tight position, and so I would much rather, as much as we can be prepared for startup costs, and if so we have the ability to shift things, even if it's not the perfect situation for the employee, I think that can help us in the long run. That's me personally, but it doesn't hurt to know what that cost to all the members would be.
I'd like to hear more, to see it, the two of something else. I don't know what
And
kind of
and we're
time we
happy
have.
to bring back at the next, I know you guys are meeting every 2 weeks now, so we can have something done. And then we just would have to adjust whatever budget you approve for starting July 1. That helps, but Mayor, that is why we went this route, because we understand you're all having to kick in for those fund balances as well.
I'm happy nobody's losing their job. Nobody's being affected financially. However, we are losing a watch commander. Somebody's losing a title. And somebody's losing an opportunity to a sergeant's promotion. So those are things to be considered, but I am glad that we could do it without nobody losing their job, which was our original commitment. But there are other changes.
Sorry, Lieutenant, what's his name?
The one that impacted
Yeah, who?
Lieutenant Nate Lord, he's right there.
Lord?
Lord.
Lord, was Lieutenant Lord given the option to this, or was he directed that this would be the decision?
Would you like to speak?
No.
Nate and I have talked every day, we've talked about these options, we talked last night. Him, the other watch commander updated on some of these things that are happening and what the potential impacts are. There are various options, but it does impact people. Talked about him, his family, and he's can't do what he's willing to do. Great people in watch command, I mean, main consider, we'll have the 2 watch commanders. Sheriff is presented probably the most cost-effective option here. So it's Councilman Prokopis said there are other options. And I'll work with Nate, Chief Gray, to try to, if we go this direction, to minimize the impact.
Could we table this and you come back in 2 weeks at our next? At our,
You can, right? Yeah, it says approval in there.
So one of the things that we do today is we adopt a tentative budget. I had mentioned accept, but the statute actually reads adopt. So we'll leave the document as it is. So that obviously can be amended in between the adoption of a tentative budget and approval of a final budget. So during that time period, yes, you can consider changes to the budget as well. It's only after the adoption of the final budget that it's done. So you could do it in your meeting in terms of this issue, and then the second June meeting is the one where you actually adopt the final budget. So yeah, we do have opportunities to table this and come back and look at it in 2 weeks.
Whatever we decide at this point, I think it's really important that we send a message to our employees, that we're trying to do the best thing for them. Titles, money, and what they're earning, so that they realize that we're taking this time, not because we're trying to be penny pincher, but that we're trying to do the best thing for them, for all of those that are involved. And I remember when I was working, sometimes there was shifts of, instead of teaching this grade, I would teach another grade, and that decision was made for me rather than me. And it didn't affect my financial status, but it did affect my way of life and my family's way of life. So that, I want to make sure that that's considered too. I think that would be between the employee and
yeah, I think that'd be great too. Personally, support the direction, but come back in 2 weeks with what our options are. And ask that we include Lieutenant Lord in those conversations.
And labor. He is
And
labor,
labor.
but he would
And
like.
labor.
Yeah, he'll take it out for that one, so.
Yeah. Okay. No, we can do that. Do that when in 2 weeks.
Thank you. I would entertain a motion to table this item then until our next meeting.
so moved.
We have a motion and a second on that. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Yeah, that passes. Very stable. Thank you.
Just to note that when something is tabled, there needs to be a motion to pull it off the table. So when we come to the next meeting, doesn't have to be a motion to consider this matter.
And we'll have to remind that.
Just curious, go, we did a motion to move it to the next agenda.
That might be better next time.
Better next
but, we'll just remember to pull it off the table. But it means the same thing. It's not being considered today, but it can be considered at a later meeting. So we'll just remember to make a motion to pull off the table and propose it. On the tenant's positions.
You can't just put it back on the agenda.
We'll have it on the agenda, but it still has to be pulled off the table.
Thank you. All right, item 5, Finance Committee update.
Yeah, so pretty much what we talked about during the financial committee is on our agenda, what we just was discussing. And I'm working, talking about. And that will be much more.
Thank you. Item 6, acceptance of donations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quick things. Again, I want to Brad Marshall, who is a volunteer with our drone unit. And I just got to say, the drone unit got a request from me. If you heard about that shooting in Weaver, where the guy was shooting the officers from his house. We requested us to help, and our drone unit went up there. Pretty instrumental in resolving that. So, Brad Marshall has donated a 30-inch smart TV, and that's part of in the back of the drone sergeant's car. You can pull that out, and commanders and watch commanders and everybody can watch what's actually happening live with the drone footage in the back of that car. So it's been a fantastic tool. So we're very appreciative of Brad donating that. A great volunteer. We're grateful to him.
Chief, do you have those monitors in all the vehicles that, and if you, how many more would you need to? I'm just curious, how many would you need to supply in that?
Well, we've had discussions about retrofitting some of the vehicles for the drone operators. This was kind of a beta test, with this customized clocks and essentially a command center, which is pull out desk, monitor, lock boxes for the drones. It's one of those that are expensive. So, you know, down the road, we could. We're just kind of playing with this right now, see how it works out.
The video that I've ended up seeing that you guys have been showing, just been awesome to see how helpful that can be to you guys' work. I think it's awesome.
It's 100% the future. And everybody in law enforcement is recognizing that. We've resolved so many situations in the past few months where instead of an officer going in and taking unnecessary risks, put the drone in there. We even had a couple of suspects surrender to the drone. Drone units. Wow, okay, we're on something. Good thing. Real great safety, officer safety.
And Chief Masseron, if you remember, our drones were called out in April, yesterday on that deal out in South Weaver.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Barricade, yeah. And they're not the only ones that have requested our assistance. So it's not just beneficial to UPD, but society as a whole.
Yeah, we've used missing persons, silver alerts, search and rescue. Just whole gamut. It's great piece of technology.
Make a motion to accept the gift with appreciation. Thank you, Chief.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Yeah, that passes. Thank you. Item 7, approval of surplus resolution 230501.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, again, surplus in the packet, it's essentially vehicles. In the year 2012. And again, we appreciate the amazing job you have food folks doing, maintaining a healthy fleet and doing it in a very cost effective way. And we still are getting prime money for our salvage vehicles. Other departments, the auction folks, you have a number of different platforms to try to maximize the salvage money we get out of this.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 23-05-01, which is a surplus resolution.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Yeah, that passes. Thank you. All right, now item 8, tentatively adopt fiscal year 2023 to 2024 UPD tentative budgets.
Well, our CFO is walking in, so I'll just get started. Way up. Today, we're going to present the tentative budget for the fiscal year 2023 and 2024. In the letter that was emailed out to all of you, it did indicate that for countywide services are included in this year's budget, but the goal is for countywide services not to be included in next year's budget because the planning is moving on. So with this budget, we did keep it before. So the UPD budget as a whole is, we met the 4% cap that you could ask for. It is below that cap. This budget includes a 3% COLA for all our employees. However, that does not include the crossing guards who will receive a 29% increase to bring their salaries up from the $16.28 that they currently make to the market, which is $21 an hour.
Sure. Really quick question. Those online, there was a online copy of this.
Do you have an online copy?
We just send it out at the meeting.
Can you put it up there? Okay. And right now it's just my letter, so, but we can.
Want to make sure that they've got it.
Yeah, thank you. There is a market increase for the chief of police, 5%, 3% for all the officers, 1% for all other sworn. And then for the civilians, there is a $300,000 budgeted to provide market adjustments to bring them their wages equitable. So it's not across the board for every civilian, but depending on what their job assignment and description is and where they fall into that market, that will be adjusted. Also doing, thanks to Rick for this, he did an analysis of actual officers' wages and benefits for the last 3 years. And we were able to show the precincts that if they budget rather than the 98%, you could budget down to 96% because that 3-year average showed that works for you. So that does include that. Also, the benefits were reduced from 63% to 56% for sworn officers and for civilians from 55% to 50% for civilians. However, that does not include the records division where average benefits were reduced from 55% to 53%. These were all these reductions were achieved even with the 2.5% increase in health insurance that the board has elected to do an 80-20 cost sharing with employees. And then also in this, we did a reduction in call. There's a reduction in calls for service in Mill Creek and Holiday, and that lowered your shared percentages because of those reductions in calls. And then on May 3rd, 2023, this board approved the creation of the Chief of Reorganization. The results is a temporary reassignment of personnel, a Chief of Police, Deputy Chief, and Lieutenant. This will have a budgetary impact that will be covered by other savings, including the removal of the under sheriff's compensation, which will be moving him over to the sheriff's office starting July 1, and it will not be reflected in this budget. Since 2017, we have prioritized transparency in our budget, and in the last 6 years, we have worked diligently. We have an amazing fiscal team. We have had 2 CFOs. We have Debbie sitting here. We have Lisa in the audience. And I really think in the last 6 years, we have really made this budget. The UPD budget is very transparent and very understandable. I get compliments all the time from other just members of the community that have been able to pull it up online and understand that where there are other police departments where it's really hard to see what they actually budget for. So we're super proud of this, and thank you to our fiscal team for all the work that they have done. This really does show you where every dollar is spent. And that is what our goal is. And so we hope that, you know, that we work hard to be as transparent as possible. And I know sometimes transparency is tough. And we have to talk about the hard things sometimes, but it is the best way. That's, you know, the goal that we have. And I want to thank Debbie. She came in at a time that we really needed a CFO, and she came in full of fire and ready to help us as much as possible. And I know how overwhelming it can be. And she took this on, and at the same time, you know, worked with our rest of the team to make this happen. So that's right.
Sheriff, I appreciate that. So yes, you do have the tentative budget before you, and the sheriff's letter pretty much covers everything that is in there. Again, it does fall within the PBIM that the board adopted at the March 19 meeting. Includes the reorganization and the reassignments. What it does not include is the second appropriation for the unfunded the deficit that we need to reduce. It does include the first appropriation. That's the one that's due for this fiscal year. What we will need from the board today is a decision from you, well, particularly from Mill Creek, Holiday, Midvale. Well, no, let's see, where are they? Mid Creek, Holiday, Midvale.
Luis is already.
This Luis is already accounted for the county. We need a decision from you on whether you want to use fund balance for that appropriation, or if you want us to invoice you and pay us with cash, because that will affect what your fund balance is. So currently, as it stands, the budget, we have achieved a 3.5% increase in the total overall budget. So that is below the 4% minimum that you were requesting next. Mill Creek's portion is 1.16%. Holiday is 0.7% increase. Midvale is a 4.12 increase. Salt Lake County citywide is a 5.57 increase, and then Saliza overall is a 4.6% increase for a total of 3.5%. Your final increase was calculated by comparing your member assessment from last year prior to your use your fund balance. So we can have a decision by each one of you on how you want to address the appropriate. Oh, and if you want to, as I stated, the appropriation that we're paying for this year, we took them out of your fund balances. If you don't want that to be in your using your fund balance, please let us know. And also let us know if you want us to take it out of your fund balance for next year, or if you want us to invoice you for it. So those are the two items. We have calculated your estimated fund balances through June 30, 2023. And Rick, if you can get that. Okay. Just have it on the screen for you. As I stated, it does include the first appropriation for your fiscal year 23. We took your ending balance as of, well, the audited balance for June 30, 2022. And then what you use for your fund balance in this fiscal year. And then what we project you're going to be using through the end of this year at June 30, 2023. And so that leaves each one of your fund balances. We don't have a copy.
You email this to
Huh?
us.
You email us. Yes, we will email you a copy of that.
And you said they need to let you know by today. That
Well,
might be a challenge.
Well,
Because
okay.
I know some need to meet with their CFOs and city managers. Through their finance.
Yeah.
folks.
Yeah,
So
that's
we-
fine.
we
We
just go
actually
out.
just need it before the final budget is adopted, right? So we can reflect that in the final budget when we get those to you.
You currently have our general fund one built in the budget. That's just
The one
being
for this
pulled out of
fiscal
your
year
fund.
2023 is in this fund balance. The one for next year is not. It is not reflected in this fund balance.
How much is the one for next year?
It's exactly the same as it was this year, so.
The
And
three.
we know you can't see the screen, but it's up on the screen.
No, I
Oh,
saw it. And it's
yeah.
listed here.
Yeah,
For
it's listed in
countywide, it's
your-
the
yes,
358.
it is listed in your budget there. If you want to find what that is.
I understand.
Right, if you want to go to your budget summary tab. It will be the second page in. It says fiscal year 2024 member assessment. And it is the line, it's the orange colored line, and that says what your appropriation is. So once we email you what your fund balances are, you can take that same figure and reduce your fund balance by that amount, if your intent is to use fund balance.
What is the fund, what line is the fund balance?
Fund balance is not in here, we'll email you what that is.
It was on
It's
the,
behind you.
It was, yeah, it was. Yeah.
That's current fund balance.
So
That's
this
the one
line,
in here,
we
that's
actually
what it would
use
be,
it this year.
30.
Holiday will use fund balance. Holiday will use fund balance.
You will be using it, so you know that for sure. Okay, good.
Right, chief, we know that for sure.
and are you gonna use any fund balance to pay? Are you doing that too? They needed, I don't know, if it's in their fund balance to pay for the bill.
Yeah, well, we reflected it for the bill
For the
that
ones
was for
that have already
2023, and we just need to know if you want to continue, if you want us to leave it in for this. So next fiscal.
Yeah, we've got 154 we used this year.
Right.
And
And then you'll have another one.
we'll use 154 next year out of what we have.
Yeah.
And then I assume we'll, historically, we will accumulate more fund balance next year, so no reason for us to build that, so we'll bring the 154 out of whatever we have for next.
Yeah. It makes sense, but that's totally your decision. Again, this does not reflect what we discussed earlier regarding the lieutenant position. So depending on what the source decides on next meeting, that will also be included in your final budget. That's it, unless you have any questions.
Questions, comments for Sheriff Dent? Otherwise, now you. We're at the place to the motion. Okay.
So I'll make a motion to adopt, is that right, Harry? Adopt is the correct word?
Yes.
The tentative budget for 2023-2024.
But I think you can have a public hearing before. we-
Oh, I'm sorry. Then I'll make a motion now. Public hearing.
All right, we do have a motion to open the public hearing.
Second, Rob Daly, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Oh, do we need a roll call for a public hearing?
Let's take one because I'm not sure.
Okay, Harmony, you call roll.
Director Bradley,
Aye.
Director Bruns, Director Cardenas.
Aye.
Director Daly,
Aye.
Director Keegley, Director Litvak,
Aye.
Director Olson.
Aye.
Director Peterson.
Aye.
Director Prokopis.
Aye.
Director Silvestrini. Director Stevenson.
All right, that passes and we will open the public hearing. Do we have any public comments on the tentative budget? Want to double check if we have any online as well. Okay. Seeing none,
I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing.
You have a motion
Second.
and a second. We just do an all in favor on this one.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
I'm almost certain we did not need a roll call vote, so my apologies.
Basically, just do it every time.
Okay, so any opposed to that? Seeing none, okay, that passes. Public hearing is closed. Now I will entertain the motion to accept the tentative budget. unless there's no
Adopt.
further-
Done.
Adopt the tentative budget.
I had that right, just the timing.
I'm at least trained, but I'm telling you to make a change. So, unless there's any other discussion.
I'll state the motion once again to adopt the 2023-2024 UPD tentative budget.
Have a motion? Is there a second? And the second, thank you. Any discussion on that? Do you want a roll call or?
Now, because I don't know on this one, we will do a roll call.
Generally, we do all in favors, but on a budget, I think let's do a roll call.
Director Bradley,
Aye.
Director Bruns,
Aye.
Director Cardenas.
Aye.
Director Daly,
Aye.
Director Teagley, Director Litvak,
Aye.
Director Olson,
Aye.
Director Peterson,
Aye.
Director Prokopis,
Aye.
Director Silvestrini, Director Stevenson.
Aye. All right, that passes. Moving on to our last item. Approval of the May 3rd, 2023 UPD board meeting minutes. I either entertain a motion or if there are any amendments to the minutes.
It's funny.
Yeah, we do have a motion to accept minutes. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to a second. Any discussion on that? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Thank you. Do we have any other business?
Mr. Chair, just very quickly, the city of Holiday will be honoring the first responders in the city this week as it aligns more now with the national days for both fire and police. And we had some volunteers that donated money, or not volunteers, but citizens that donated money to that with the city. And we had a lot of volunteers put together some buckets for all of our officers and firefighters, and firefighters did get the same exact bucket, even though the police officers thought they should get half a bucket. But anyway, that will culminate with the breakfast that we'll be having, a pancake breakfast at the fire station. 104 Saturday morning. Chief will be there, and we've got banners up in the village. If anybody wants to go see headshots of the police officers that serve Holiday, they're up in the Holiday Village. But anyway, just to show our appreciation for the good work they do for the citizens of Holiday.
So is our next meeting June 7th, as the state's here?
That's what I recall.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
This is the 6 o'clock meeting.
Correct.
Excuse me?
There's a.
Another meeting.
It's morning and 6 o'clock.
So just to clarify, as a reminder, June 7th, we do have our 9 AM board meeting, but then we'll also do our 6 PM public hearing. So we'll get to hang out all day.
You guys will be fed. Just let Mayor Silvestrini know.
We'll have to.
Breakfast, we will be fed breakfast.
All day.
Dinner for whoever shows up. I don't think
All right, with that, entertain motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, you have a second? We're gonna go really slow on the second. All in favor, please say aye.